Good evening. May I know
My
your
name
good
is
name?
Shreya. My name is Shreya, and I would be
Right.
taking this interview on Auto Drive, and I would be host for the day.
Okay.
And how are you doing,
Okay.
sir?
All good. All good. I hope you are also keeping safe and fine at this COVID time.
Yes, we are taking all the necessary precaution, but yes, Delhi is always at the radar. Let's hope
Yeah.
things look positive in the near future, where it's headed.
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah. Absolutely.
Tushar, sir, welcome to the Early Birds Club, and this is the obstacle to opportunity drive. At any point of time you feel that there is a network glitch, I'm not audible to you, please be comfortable
Mhm.
enough to ask and raise a hand, or just pause me right there and ask me to repeat,
Sure.
right?
Sure. Sure.
So,
Please.
going ahead, Tushar sir, very warm welcome to the Early Birds Club, and thank you for
My pleasure.
taking out time. I know there is a very tight bandwidth on which everyone is these days, because every one of us are working from home, and it's a dual makeshift duty right now which is going on. So, Tushar sir, before we go ahead, I think the more than us, our audience would love to know more about you. Who is Tushar Kansal, and what is the agenda of today's? Like, why were you motivated today to answer our questions? What brought you here? How has your journey been?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Riya, for. Uh, First of all, thank you to O2 Drive for inviting me today and for being so courteous and giving me so much of respect. So, why little bit about myself. I did my engineering in textiles. Have been in like complete Delhi boy. I mean, have been in Delhi since 1982. And after doing textiles, I missed computer branch by one step. I was 62 ranked, computer finished at 61. So I always wanted to be either in technology or in finance because I used to read a lot, and I used to see that all these successful people, they are having a finance background, they are having technology background, and the dot-com boom was going on. So I did MBA in finance from University of Delhi in 2001, and post that I set up my own business in education, which grew very well to 800 students in 2006. We were training students for IIT entrance examinations and had 3 centers. Post that, a lot of competition started coming in. We needed capital, so I got an exit. I sold my institute to Narayana Institute and joined the corporate because my bread and butter was always finance. So that's how I worked for private equity practice at Deloitte and Touche. Then I was part of the team at Brand Capital, the venture arm of Times of India Group, where we invested $100 million across companies, and headed treasury at MTS India, the Russian telecom company, where raised almost $2.5 billion for the company, and was CFO with Distribution Logistics. That's a company owned by the American PE fund Guggenheim Partners. In the last 7 years, they have been the most exciting part of my professional journey. I went into venture capital. I started investing. I learned investing. I met startups. In the past 7 years, I would have met 3,500 startups. And I personally have built relationships with more than 650 global funds: Singapore, India, Dubai, US, UK, Hong Kong, and have met them. Have met such wonderful people, and I just love this space. And I'll be happy to take you to the journey of why this space is so important and how it became important in the global macroeconomic scenario. And personally speaking, I'm married. I have 2 kids. Father is IIT Delhi 71 batch. Sister is married to Director of Finance, Amazon India. They are based in Bangalore. And my wife is head of capital markets at Axis Capital. And so we are all professionals here. So the culture at home is accordingly so finance is the lifeline: investments, finance, venture capital. So it's very exciting.
So, Tushar sir, a very interesting fact which I noticed. Uh, your journey was always like you have been very consecutive. You never stopped. Like you kept on exploring new ventures. You kept on exploring, giving yourself that second motivation, second chance, second glance at success, and that's how you are here today. I think this is a very motivational journey because a lot of us, we are very restricted. We are always keeping ourselves inside a box, and when we keep ourselves inside a box, we are always looking nothing beyond that one destination, but we forget that it's a journey that's going to matter in the end. Like what we are going to
Right.
learn along, how to read between the lines, how our career is looking forward. But then you have always taken that second chance, and I think this is a lot of motivation for pe- youngsters these days, because I'm into education, and when I go to schools, I meet children. You ask them about their aspiration. The best answer is that I don't know what I want to become. That's the best answer, because that means that child is open to everything. That child will be open to learning not only about biology, chemistry, or history or geography. They might be open to even learn about music. They might be open to learn about finance, about the economical aspect. So these are those children who are a lot curious about knowing. And I think, Tushar sir, I'm not sure, but your family background has given you a lot of, given you a upstatement kind of thing where along your journey about telling you that you are headed in the right direction.
Yeah, I have my failures too. With each failure, it was like a journey against the wall. You are trying to climb the wall and you are being pushed down. But I think if I look back, all those moments which have defined me, uh, and amongst the most important and precious ones, were the ones which gave me very hard lessons.
True.
So you very beautifully said, about having a free spirit, having an open thinking, believing that the best is possible and anything is possible,
True.
and that's a very important one.
So, Tushar sir, telling you about the Early Birds Club. Uh, we started this in during the lockdown period in the month of March. This was the idea that we refused to sleep over, and we just woke up one day and we thought, we were just in a very small. Me and Saikat were in a conversation about how the market is growing, how the market is on a boom, and how youngsters have a lot of idea out there. Every now and then we were looking at there were Facebook groups where there were youngsters, they were presenting the ideas, and those were actually innovative ideas, but there was a lack of guidance in every idea. Somewhere or the others, even last year, as per the McKinsey report, almost only 13% of the startup ideas had survived in the market. Rest all had
Yeah.
collapsed because either they were not getting funding, or they were not headed in the right direction, or the outcomes were not as desired, or they were not having the right mentorship. And all of these
Right.
summed up a huge problem in the market out there, where we want to give chance to people who want to start up with their own idea, not inside a box but outside the box, and then they want to grow with each other. So we thought, let's create a barter kind of system wherein we can learn from each other and grow. And thank you, Tushar sir, for being here today with us this evening and encouraging us
It's
with
my
your
pleasure.
words. So,
It's my pleasure.
thank you, sir. So, going ahead, sir, now you have worked with a lot of startup ventures. You have met a lot of people globally. What do you think is the first? What are the three things, top things, which click with you when you want to understand that what investors look at someone when they are asking for funding? What are the top three things which investors look at?
So, there are two ways to look at it. One is on founder market fit, which is like a personal basis. What are the qualities a founder carries? And then is the business model. And both are very much interlinked. So, what we say in the investment world is the earlier you are in making an investment, the more you look closely at the founder, because business plan is yet to play out, because revenue potential or proof of concept. So we have proof of concept, then we have minimum viable product, then we have product market fit. So if these steps have not been crossed, or some of these steps have been crossed, you look very hardly at the founder. Very hard at the founder. Sorry. So what do you look in a founder? I mean, you look at the checks which are raised by founders who already had a successful exit. They are always $5 million, $10 million, $15 million, because people say that this guy has been there, he has seen that, he has the X factor. So when I speak to founders, the ones who are doing it first time, of course their nervous energy is very different. What matters is how well you understand the numbers behind a business. That is the most defining quality in a founder. So there is this company which sells which gives electric vehicles on rent to the drivers of Big Basket, Grofers, Zomato,
Yes.
Swiggy. And this guy, he's actually he's actually from the medical background and not even a doctor, and belonging to a very small city. So when I met him, in 1 hour, believe you me, all he discussed was numbers. And he just took a piece of paper. There are two ways he explained everything. One is top down, one is bottom up. So top down as in what is the Chinese market, how it has grown, this is the total size of the market. Bottom up, these are the players, this is their revenue, this is the growth. So both ways he was able to prove that the Indian market is growing, Indian market is there, it will definitely grow, there is definitely a potential to earn profit, and he had the numbers in control. Having a good communication skill, having a good personality, confidence, the belief in your business, it comes from understanding the numbers. And I had told that guy, that I will definitely try to raise funding for you. But before I raise, I think you'll already be able to raise. And within few days, I saw that he raised funding. So, this is what this X factor, people, and I tell you very frankly, a lot of things have been made very complicated in the funding and startup space. But bottom line is, if a guy can explain you his business in simple words in 15 minutes, then he really understands and believes in the business, and that is the bottom line.
Yes. So this is the X factor which you feel that investors are looking at for funding. But now, Tushar sir, when we talk about funding in in the dictionary terms, what exactly can you just explain? Because there are a lot of newcomers who go to read books to read about what is seed funding or series funding. But can you explain in a very simpler way that what kind of funding is made for whom?
Okay. So let us, let me give you a brief macroeconomic background as to how venture capital became so important. If you recall, there are communities in India like Gujaratis, Sindhis,
Yes.
Andhrites. They used to help each other whenever they go to a new country. They would help the others that, just come over here. There is a lot of business here. I'll support you with funds. I'll support you with, at some point in time, the institutionalization of funding happened. And, the earliest example I can give you is of the Dutch shipping business. So people used to pool in money, buy ship. And sometimes what happened was the only ship they had bought, it didn't return. So what happened was they started crowdfunding. So they said, let us buy 20 ships and let all of us own all the 20 ships. So let us have a small stake in each ship. And that's when the portfolio approach started. So if you have 10 ships, 8 don't return, one does business of 100 times, The second one does business of 3 times. On a portfolio basis, your return is excellent. So that's how the portfolio approach started. On a macroeconomic basis, let me tell you, the dollar is the world's reserve currency. So it means that the world's trade happens in dollars. Now, at some point in time in 1985, around that, Japan had taken over a lot of manufacturing from the US. And at the same time, South Korea and Southeast Asian countries were taking over manufacturing from US, UK, and Europe. And US and UK and Europe, they were kind of developed countries. They didn't want to keep businesses which were labor intensive, which caused harm to the environment. And and also because they were developed, their currencies were very strong, so they had to pay a lot of salaries. They were very powerful labor unions, and so all these businesses started shifting out to Japan, South Korea, to Southeast Asia. India lagged. India came in late, and China picked up around 1981. So at that time, what happened was that these economies started growing. And just as Henry Ford said, if you want to develop a country, you make a manufacturing plant. People will have salaries, they will have consumption, a whole GDP will grow. So what happened was the US became the banker to the world, and they just made money by managing money. So after the dot-com bust of 99, the US realized that what they held as an advantage over the other parts of the world was, one, the power to print the dollar. Dollar being a world currency, they can print whatsoever number of dollars. Inflation won't be there in their country. The value of dollar won't go down. Secondly, they realized that high technology, intellectual property is their forte, and they should build a strong Silicon Valley. And thirdly, defense exports. They should always sell outdated defense technology and keep the latest with themselves, and always keep on doing research and development in defense. Now, all this led to a very healthy high-tech system in the US startup ecosystem, starting with Silicon Valley. And the power to fund that ecosystem, because they had the power to create dollars. So this led to the unlisted private startup space, and a lot of funding reaching out to these companies using cutting edge technology and capturing market shares. I mean, I'll give you an example. Look at Uber. The moment Uber solved the problem of finding a taxi on the smartphone, that's like the easiest way to find a taxi now. The moment they solved it, they replicated the same by plug and play across 160 countries. So once you achieve a product market fit, you are easily able to plug and play across different countries. So things just boom, because a product, once proven, can be just put across the world. And in all the countries, they started supporting startups. They started giving a lot of tax benefits, ease of business, and that's how this whole thing. And then you have the mind-numbing numbers like Facebook valued at $2 trillion, Apple valued at $2 trillion, a company like Tesla, which made profit for the first time in its history, valued at $900 billion, which is more than the combined market capitalization of all automakers listed ones. I mean, so people see these numbers, the youngsters, they see these numbers, they want to also, achieve all that. And that's how, and one part in the Indian piece is that the middle class always in 1970s and 80s used to rely on government jobs.
Yes.
Or the best of the lot migrated outside to other countries. So when Narayan Murthy created Infosys and distributed ESOPs, and all of those people became crorpatis, millionaires. So that's when the middle class aspiration of uh, earning through knowledge and technology, it started taking shape. And post that, the dot-com boom and the subsequent startup fundings and Lee Fixell of Tiger Global was actually the guy who got a lot of success in China in the startup space. And then he thought that China has 20% of the world population, India has 16% of the world population. Chinese are young, and so is India. Right now, our median age is 29. So he said if he can create a startup success story in China, then why can't he create a startup success story in India? And that's how he funded Flipkart. He funded all these companies. And once Lee Fixell put his trust on these companies in India, then the flood of VC money came in. And now we have like
Now
the
there's
world's
no stop to it.
amongst the top success stories. Our startup ecosystem is very strong, and I will be happy to explain more about the micros of the whole startup ecosystem here in India and in nearby places.
Sir, very beautiful. I'm not from an economics background or finance background, but then the way you explained it, I think someone who is aspiring or looking at startups should take motivation from that. Yes, there, that's where my dreams are. I think you have explained beautifully the entire concept on how we move from a macro managing economic ecosystem to a micromanagement economic ecosystem, and how we have grown across the decade. So if we look
Right.
back, sir, now earlier when MSMEs were growing in India, small startups were at a boom, and initially, then people were looking out at the very instance when the idea was floated in the market. They were looking out for funding because they thought that this is a very fresh stage, and at this point of time, I am a better prospect to investors. But now today, since there is a lot of competition, it's a very competitive, highly competitive market, and there one idea has different facets to it when you talk in the market. So when exactly I, as a startup founder, or I, someone with the idea, when I should be thinking that yes, now it is the right time to go to the investors, when is the right time for me?
So Shreya, I mean, first to just a small comment on the fact that you said you are not from finance, and I mean, there is a book which came out recently by David Epstein, Range: Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. So come to think of it, if you are a startup founder and you have to manage your teams, does it mean that you have to learn product management, marketing, HR, technology,
No.
finance? I mean, you'll go bonkers. I mean, see, so the thing is, they say that nowadays generalists are needed who can get a macro understanding of all these things and basically know how to manage people. And if he's able to manage the decision makers, he can get the job done. And Jeff Bezos is like my idol. So this guy used to work in an investment bank. He was from a middle class family, and he just realized the power of the internet one day. And look at his decisions. People used to tell him that you are making so much of money, you put this money in some other thing, you put this money in some other business. He just kept on making money and putting that money back and expanding Amazon. He had to, his company was in losses till 2014 because all the money he was making, he was putting it back. And the market actually, they gave him a heads up, and they said that we are happy being invested in a company whose market share keeps on increasing even if it is making losses. And his faith has showed. I mean, Amazon is the top company in the world now. Coming to startup founders who have who have a startup idea. So at what stage they should look for funding? My advice is, in the startup world, there is a term FNF, friends and family. So you bootstrap the company, take little bit of help from friends and family. If you get money at the idea stage, probably you will be diluting too much equity because there is nothing to support your valuation. An idea might be there, but that idea has not been converted into a revenue generating business. It has not been converted into intellectual property. If it is backed by intellectual property, then you have some barriers to entry. So other companies can't just enter. Deep pocket companies can't just compete with you. So I've seen some lucky people in the market. They were at idea stage. A guy I met, he got 60 lakhs by diluting 7% equity at the beginning. Now that kind of thing usually doesn't happen. Generally you have to dilute a lot. So get bootstrap the company, take some help from friends and family, proof of concept, minimum viable product, and then product market fit. Once you have done the product market fit, so your pricing, your distribution strategy, your product positioning, everything is kind of visible. Then you at least do a turnover of $100,000, around 75 lakhs, at least 1 crore or 50 lakhs. I'm just talking about the turnover, which is so if you do that, then of course, your funding round can be at terms which is quite suitable to you. So you will be diluting. I always advise the founders that in the initial dilution, you should dilute around 16 to 24% and possibly around 20%. So if you are diluting around 20% and getting a handful of money, and any founder will be happy with that kind of fundraise.
I think so. That's a very realistic check. That keeps a very realistic check on where to actually start asking for funding, because since, as you said, not many people get lucky in this market, and
there is also the case of funding by giving your intellectual property as collateral. So Singapore has the world's #1 intellectual property backed funding system. So if you have a good IP, you have a good intellectual property, just give it as collateral to the government. They will give you a good amount of money. Once you make the money from business, you can return it back and take your IP back. So like Y Combinator, the money which Y Combinator gives, it is very easy terms. Once you make the money, you can very easily give back the money to Y Combinator and take your equity. Just give them some rate of interest like a loan. Otherwise also, they usually take, those kind of options are also available.
True. Thank you so much.
And if you if you are early in the funding stage, then you should take help of incubators who have an ecosystem of co-working spaces, taxation people, lawyers, CS, company secretaries, mentorship. So you can take help of those agencies.
Yes, sir. So, sir, now coming, when you said that, like in Singapore, they have a collateral system where you can keep your intellectual property, you can give it as a collateral to the government, and the government will give you an actual amount in return of it. But do you think that, intellectual property, that again depends that how we are going to safekeep our property is by giving revenue to the government or returning that particular evaluated amount back to the government. But now, when we talk about investors, when we are moving to investors, we are turning to investors for investment. Do you feel that it's absolutely necessary to sign an NDA with the investors just in case to keep our ideas safe in the market?
So it's like I have I raised $2.5 billion for MTS India, and my company was a very although it was a Russian company, but for all practical purposes it was like a European company. Their working style, and everything was modeled on the European companies. So they are quite particular about signing a non-disclosure agreement whenever we started talking with any financial institution or a bank. Uh, and but the fact of the matter is, there is a practical problem if you want to sign an NDA with the investor here in India. In India, the investor gets almost 20 to 40 pitch decks or new startups a day, every day.
Yes.
It's practically impossible for them to sign NDAs before trying to understand a business. If you are so particular about the technology which you have at hand that you really want to sign an NDA, then I would suggest that please be prepared that a huge number of investors won't talk to you, and more than 50% of the investors you'll approach in India won't be happy signing an NDA as a matter of their policy of the fund. And the ones in Singapore, Dubai, Europe, UK, US, they also they would be fine to sign an NDA. I'm sure, almost 70-80% of them. But in India, it has
Not
been a
very
challenge.
practical.
So you should not disclose the secret sauce, so to say, in very simple terms. You just tell them that I have created a bulb like Einstein, but I won't tell you how the bulb runs. So
Right.
this is putting it simply.
So I think the knack of actually putting your idea out without disclosing the entire recipe, that should be what someone should.
That's where we come in. I mean,
Yes.
we I guide them in frequently asked questions, in what is due diligence, how can you save 2 weeks on the due diligence, what is a term sheet, what are the factors which investor will put out in front of you, how to negotiate the term sheet, then how to sign the shareholders agreement. And that's where people like me who have been in this system for 7-8 years, we put our professional acumen and experience and guide the companies.
And I'm sure, sir, that many people out there would obviously connect with you. We would be putting your contact email, we would putting in your details, so that people who actually look for such kind of support or seek guidance would actually turn
Thank
to
you.
you and take support. Because, sir, social media is a very powerful market this day, to this day. When lockdown happened, we all saw that internet was booming, and any marketplace which was running on the internet or on the social platform was actually taking
Mhm.
new heights. So
Yeah.
there is something which every person as a startup owner needs to seek guidance on, and I think you would be the best person for it. Now, Tushar sir, going ahead, this is my favorite question for this entire interview. That what is the actual, when does the investor expects to get a ROI on the investment, or what is the exact amount which they are looking at the initial stage?
Okay. See, every investor has an investment thesis, and the investment thesis is usually given on the website of the investor. Now, whenever you have to approach the investor, you should definitely know the investment thesis. And apart from that, there are other factors we'll be happy to explain. Usually, Europeans, whenever they put money, they are kind of patient kind of investors, like European pension funds and financial institutions. Those who have given money to funds here in India, like Elevation Capital recently raised $400 million, and Fireside raised $118 million, and Jungle Ventures raised from a German institution, DEG. They raised total, I think, more than 50 million, north of that. So usually 8 years, so you will get a good time of 6, 7, 8 years. And if it is an Indian institution, then around 5 years. And if it is a Indian traditional family, like owners of Haldirams, the big business families like the family offices, then they are a little bit impatient. So they like to see their money back like 3 years. And but anything less than 3 years is not worth it. Trust me, because the whole process of creating a viable business, expanding, fixing your processes in the company, it all calls for patience. And if you are doing things out of patience, then it can fall down like a pack of cards. And I've seen one company which was talking to me. They had raised $20 million, and the fund guy was wanting explosive growth. And so they, it was just an unfortunate instance that they burnt a lot of money in marketing, and they didn't get the follow-on round. Sometimes those things happen. So best to take money from the patient fund sources. The
And
return usually is anything north of 25% internal rate of return IRR is considered to be good. Even 20 will do, but 25 and north is very good.
Tushar sir, like in my career, I have worked with startups, and while working with these were all edtech startups, and I realized one thing. Truly said that it takes some time to make it to create a viable market, to create a strategy out there. Because no matter how good the product, if it we not strategize well, and we don't keep on upgrading ourselves in the market to keep neck to neck with the to walk shoulder to shoulder with the market requirement, then the idea collapses soon. So I also saw while the edtech startup was growing and booming, uh, it took good 3-4 years for us to establish ourselves in that particular market, and I'm only talking about a part of India, not even the entire India. So it took a
Right.
good 3 to 4 years to create a team, to strategize, to outlay all the factors which might be there out in the market, to work on those factors, then start with the
Right.
marketing part. So we got a
Right.
good, we started getting returns after a good 3 to 4 years.
Okay. Okay. I'm not surprised at all, because every product and every business plan has a journey. And it'll initially you are in investment phase. You are putting money to create capacities, to create the distributorship, or to perfect your delivery model, and also to get the right talent, and build company processes. So yeah, you are very right. I mean, I fully agree with you there.
So, Tushar sir, this was about those seeking investment. Now, when we talk about investors, uh, what do you feel is the absolute exit strategy? I'll use the term absolute because you had a lot of experience with global investors, and what is the exit strategy that they look out for from the ventures in which they are investing?
So the every investor believes that the best exit strategy is that the company comes out with an IPO. It gets listed on a stock exchange, because the company's shares will get listed. They will start getting traded, and if the company is doing better, then the price of the share will rise, and the investor has the biggest thing which is he wants, which is liquidity in the shares. He can sell his shares anytime, or why not even buy more? So IPO is the number one exit clause in the term sheet, that the company will come out with an IPO. And the good part is, like, Indian stock markets are a bit conservative, because we were a socialist country. So some of the clauses in SEBI are still not conducive to a fully capitalist kind of a stock market. Like, they say that for every IPO in which market making happens in the shares, 50% of the shares should be given to individuals, retail investors, which is like 1 lakh rupees per investor. Now, what happens is, if your IPO is even like 2 billion or $1 billion in rupees, it is huge. And then finding 50% retail investors, and if you are not able to find those 50% fully, then your IPO devolves. and it leaves such a bad name in the market that you can't come out with an IPO again. Like what happened with Emaar MGF. Their IPO devolved and they never came out with an IPO. So it makes things very dicey, So, but the government has now allowed Indian companies to directly list in global stock exchanges like Singapore, Nasdaq, NYSE, and that is the good part. And the second clause in exit strategy is that the company will get a valuation done from a third-party entity and help sell the shares of the initial investor to a new investor by giving him a good internal rate of return, which is defined. And the third one is that the company will buy back the shares from the investor. Like, any company can buy their own shares. It's called treasury stock. So Reliance keeps on buying their shares, selling their shares. And whatever shares they hold is called treasury stock. So they make money on their own shares. So the fourth one is that the founder will buy the shares and give an exit. And the fifth is, of course, it is not mentioned in the term sheet, but usually what happens is if these four things don't happen, then the company tries mergers and acquisitions, some share swap. Let me buy your company by issuing my shares and you issue me your shares. Like, I think housing.com got merged with OLX or so they try all these things. These are tried by the fund guys to somehow get an exit. Because India, frankly speaking, exits has been a little bit of a challenge.
Sir, any vote of advice from your experience which you would like to give to new startups looking for investments?
My advice is that always concentrate on building a healthy balance sheet and not only building a healthy profit and loss statement, which means that you keep all those factors in mind which will help you get investments in the future. And on the profit and loss side, just look at WeWork. WeWork was losing huge amount of money with on the unit economic side it was in the negative, which means that on each unit it was selling, it was making a loss. So investors now look for healthy unit economics, that on each unit you are selling you should be making a profit. So focus on building healthy unit economics. On the balance sheet side, make it less complicated, make things even, square, do your business in white, as we say in India. And there is, some investors, what they are doing is, some companies, they have a holding company outside India. Like Flipkart had a holding company in Singapore. And when Walmart was wanting to buy it, they found it better that they can easily buy the holding company which is outside. So they bought it for $21 billion. So sometimes, those things are good because India, Singapore, they have a double taxation avoidance agreement, and the capital gains tax in Singapore is much lesser than India. And the liquidity available, which means the money available for investment in Singapore is quite a lot, because Singapore is considered to be the gateway for Asian economies, the financial gateway for this region. So you can try those things out. A lot of investors, I'll give you a very, a very famous, not a very famous thing, something which is a lot of investors tell me. India is a very difficult consumer market. We are a huge consumer market, but we are a difficult consumer market. We are very price sensitive. We are quality sensitive. We are service sensitive. And the time taken to make a decision about buying a product and service, people have huge amount of time. They can keep on researching and, talking to people, researching websites. So what some investors known to me, what they do is, they achieve product market fit in India. And once they have achieved a product market fit in India, then they are very confident that the same product or service can easily sell in 194 other countries. because it's sold in India.
Yes. And it's the most
And
difficult
India is
market.
the most difficult market. And you know, look at the numbers on a purchasing power parity basis, PPP basis. Our economy is $11 trillion. We are the third largest economy in the world, and the consumption. There are three parts to a GDP: investment, exports, and consumption. Exports are not too much, only $300 billion. Investments, after 2012, the banking fiasco, when the loans which banks, public sector banks gave out 20 lakh crore worth of loans, 12 lakh crore didn't come back. So the capacity to give money for investments is less. That's why the government is creating a new DFI, Development Finance Institution. So investments are not much, exports are not much. Our consumption is huge. I mean, and because we have 600 million people below the age of 30, they buy a lot. They are globally tuned in, and so you know, so that's we are a very huge consumption economy, and that's why a lot of funds are funding consumer B2B, consumer B2C, consumer B2B, B2C, B2B2C. You know, so that's so you know, if you achieve PMF in India, then that's another. You can always have your top management outside India, have the back office and the mid management and the below that in India, because our human resource is good quality but cheap.
Yes.
And that's how you can create a global company, right? You know, sitting right in India. Of course, the international rules have become very strict. Earlier, you could just open a bank account in Singapore, Dubai, sitting in India. Now it is not
Now it's
easy.
very stringent. Yes. True. So, sir, Tushar, sir, thank you so much for enlightening us today, and thank you so much for boosting us with so much knowledge. Because I think it's people like you who talk with experience, we get to learn more and more. Because there are few things which we cannot get every nook and hold of it from the books, because books only
Yeah.
teach us what we need to know, but then there are few things which we do not need to know at the moment, but at some point of time we might be experiencing it, and then we would be looking out for guidance that what is the way forward from here, we are stuck here. So you have a
See,
lot of
I will
experience.
give you very, you know, it's a very brotherly advice to all of those who watch it, to you as well, that, you know, write a lot. Once you write blogs on medium.com, and once you write, you know, then you get the hold of how much you understand things, and you can always see the comments, improve yourself, and then, you know, based on the comments, you will want to read more, that, you know, okay, I didn't know this thing. And you know, how does an investor look at you? They search on Google your name or your company's name. Nowadays, people check only the first 10 results or 20 results, not more than that, because the results have become very accurate.
Accurate.
So, you know, they see, okay, 5 blogs on you, 3 videos on YouTube, and they see, okay, you wrote about this, you are really passionate about this. And, you know, that sort of defines them. Have a good website, have a good LinkedIn profile, have a listing on AngelList or some good platform. And, you know, so that's how they form the view. And, you know, always keep on going to events, meeting people, exchanging visiting cards. And,
Networking.
and you know, you don't keep judgments in mind that, you know, these are this type of people, these are that type of people. We are all from the same society.
Yes.
Even the investor comes from the same schools, the same places we are operating out of. So keep an open mind. You know, you will get a lot of good idea about the whole system, and you'll be, you know, I am always reachable on LinkedIn. Tushar Kansal is my name. Company is Consultancy Ventures with a K. Always available on LinkedIn. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to guide you in whichever way possible, mostly in venture capital and investment space.
Sure, Tushar sir. And sir, I feel very truly said. I think today network is net worth of a person, and also self branding is very important. When we go out there and we actually whatever we speak, the moment we start talking to people, the moment we starting making contacts, we actually are creating our own personal worth out there. So, very truly said, sir. Again, words of encouragement. Thank you so much. So, we'll wind up this interview, and as we conclude this entire motivational auto drive with you, we would just like to tell you about our media partner. So, our media partner is News Sense 18. Our outreach partner is Hamara India Incredible. We have our incubation partner, My Startup Yatra. Our education and training partner is Nolexon, and our transformation program partner, Yog Prachar by Sadhguru, who have been associated with us. And again, thank you, sir. We would be airing this episode.
I should thank you. You guys do whatever you do with a lot of love and passion. That shows across, that comes across. And I wish you are able to really help all those who are confused, who want to make a mark in this space. And I'm sure you will do it the way you are going about it. I am always reachable across on a number, always available. And I wish a lot of good wishes for you and for the company, that you do well and continue achieving
Thank you.
a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. So, sir, we started off as a Saikat Das started off as a one-man army in this organization. He actually pulled up this idea, and he just refused to give up. He wanted to do everything by himself. He's not from IT background, but surprisingly, everything from the scratch were designed by him. He learned about it every day, and it took months and months. We started making a good network. We started reaching out to people. We got a very good feedback, and we noticed one thing: people who had their own struggle or their own failures were the first one to respond. They were very infamous people who would respond, who would always respond us on LinkedIn or over emails. But then there were people mostly who had their own experience of their own hard struggles along their journey. They would always be the first one to step up and give us advice. So thank you so much, sir. We would definitely reach out to you in case of any support and mentorship. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to have been on your show today. God bless you.